Hello, everyone. My name is Brice Cox. I am the strength and conditioning coach for the UMKC men's basketball team. Some of you guys have listened to me speak on here before, and today I'm going to talk about preseason conditioning. We're going to go over several different things for you guys today. Conditioning protocols, the safety, the volumes, the intensities, and how to build the program properly. We're going to talk about some goals, and then I'm going to show you kind of what a very basic plan would look like, all in the efforts to help you all plan a solid conditioning program for your teams. First up, conditioning protocols. Number one, we're going to go over player safety. It is imperative that we are always on the lookout for the safety of our athletes, especially when it comes to conditioning, because a lot of bad things can happen if we don't follow good protocols and guidelines. So, number one, remember, it's always better to undertrain than it is to overtrain. If you undertrain your athlete, you can make up for it by adding extra down the line. If you overtrain, you could potentially harm your athletes, and then you have to take the time and let them recover from said harm. Or, worst case scenario, you could seriously damage them for long term of their cardiovascular. Let's talk about week one. Week one is a 1-to-4 work to rest ratio. And what that means is every time we do a rep, whether that takes us 10 seconds to do that rep, we're going to do 4 times that amount to rest after that rep. So, for example, you can see if I make them do a sprint for 10 seconds, once that 10 seconds is over, we're going to rest for 40 seconds, giving us a work to rest ratio of 1-to-4. And as you can see on this chart, it's going to progress each and every week. Okay. Remember, again, you'll see this throughout the slide. It is always better to undertrain than to overtrain. By doing this, it allows us to build a base over time, giving our athletes proper time to adapt and accommodate to the stress that we're putting on their bodies. So from week one to week two, it gets a little bit harder. Our body is sustaining that ability to be able to take on more if we basically spoon feed them little by little at a time. By doing that, it helps the joints recover, it helps the joints prepare, and it helps the muscles do the exact same thing and allows us to build that aerobic base which we need to compete in the game of basketball, with the goal of being able to make it through the entire season based off of our preseason conditioning. We also need to worry about cutting, okay? Reason being is because cutting adds stress to our body. It affects the joints. It intensifies the drill. If I have multiple cuts within one drill or with one run sprinting, it's harder on the body, therefore raising the intensity. So not only do we need to build out our plan of how much we're going to run, we also need to understand how much the athlete is cutting in the conditioning drill. So along those lines, you need to raise the intensity over time of the cutting. And you'll see what I'm talking about when we talk about the plan here in a second. Let's talk about goals. Goal number one, keep your athletes safe. Number two, your conditioning program needs to prepare your athletes for the demand of practice. And what I mean by that is that here at UMKC, when we condition our athletes, my goal isn't to have them game ready, it's to have them practice ready, because we have a window of what we call preseason. Hopefully, you guys have that same window. And so, my goal is to have the conditioning set up and ready for them to compete every day in practice. And then, when Coach Menzies and his staff takes over for practice, that's when they start getting that game shape, because I have built them ready to handle practice. And then practice gets harder and harder as it gets closer to our games. Therefore, we're continuing to build as the season progresses. Again, the number 3 goal is for us to be just as strong as we were at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season. So if we do too much too fast and we break their bodies down too soon, it's going to be hard for us to finish out that season. That's why a plan is very important. And here you can see the plan. Week 1, we're going to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday conditioning. You're going to go half court, meaning you start on the baseline and I want them to sprint through half court. They have 3 seconds to get there. Once they get through half court, I start the clock for the recovery time. That's going to be 12 seconds because we're on a 1-to-4 work to rest ratio. We're going to do that for 5 reps. There is no cutting because all they're doing is running from start to finish line without any turning and running. Then once we get that done, we'll move on to full court. We'll increase the distance that they have to run. That I'm going to give them 7 seconds. You may give them 8, you may give them 9, but most people can get down to the other end of the floor in less than 8 to 9 seconds. Again, you can see that the rest time is 1-to-4. So they have 7 seconds to do a rep. They get 4 times that amount to rest. Once we finish that, if I need to give them a water break or an extended time to break, maybe 2 to 3 minutes before we start the full court and back. So now they're going baseline to baseline and then back. They have 12 seconds to get down and back. And there's going to be 3 cuts when it's all said and done because we are cutting in this drill because they have to turn around and go back. So I'll hit the whistle. They got to go down and back, start the stopwatch for a 48-second recovery, and then repeat. Week 2, you will see we have upped the volume and we have upped the intensity. So we added a rep basically to each set of distance. We kept the time the same, but we have decreased the rest time. This will make their body adapt quicker. This will make their body adapt to being able to go, which is we're getting more to the game-like speed. However, you can also see we've added the full court and back. We've added an extra rep, so therefore there's an extra set of cuts. You can see that on the bottom. It's 60% volume and 1-to-3 work to rest ratio. Week 3, we're bumping it up to 70%. And you can see our reps are going up and our recovery time is going down. That's adding volume and adding intensity. Okay. And then by week 4, you should have a pretty idea of what your team is like by week 4. So now we're going 80 to 100% volume. So my goal was to get these athletes to run 10 reps. That's 100% of what my goal was. So now we can judge 8 to 10 seconds, or excuse me, 8 to 10 reps with at the same time. Now it's a 1-to-1 rest. So they run for 3 seconds, rest for 3 seconds, get ready to go again. That sprint repeatability is more game-like conditioning. And you can see how everything has basically risen as far as reps, and everything as far as recovery has lowered. So now they got to play quicker, you got to run quicker. I will say this. If you feel you need to add more cutting, you can certainly add more cutting. So if you wanted to go to, let's say we back up to week 1 and we had just straight to half court. By week 2, you can do a half court and back. That just adds cutting, but still keep your same volume intensity, 60% to 1-to-3 work to rest ratio because you're still building. However, you have added more cuts, and you can do that on the full court. You can do that on the full court and back. You can add a down back if you want. You can continue to add those things within your programming as time progresses. You just don't want to throw them in the deep end right away. But just make sure that you're planning out each week how much volume, how much intensity, and how many cuts you want in your conditioning program. As long as it's slowly progressed the degree of difficulty throughout your conditioning program. So by week 4, you may only do full court stuff. You may eliminate the half court stuff altogether, and that's fine. You may add in what we call a 17, which is 17 sideline touches in 60 seconds. Some of you may do 17 touches in 65 seconds. General rule of thumb, 60 to 68 seconds, depending on how you want to split it up amongst your guards and bigs. But however, just keep in mind when you do a sideline 17, that's 16 cuts. Or if you do a line drill, that's where you go from baseline, free throw line back, baseline to half court line back, baseline to opposite free throw line back, and baseline to baseline back. That's a line drill, but that's also 7 cuts. So make sure that you implement those things at the right time. You don't want to do those things week one. Their body's not going to be ready for it week one. If you want to add those, let's say week 3, maybe week 4, perfect. And you can do those for multiple reps as long as their body is ready for it. You got to build the base, lay the foundation before you can get into the very difficult stuff. Short and sweet. I hope that helped you guys. Like I said, just sit down, come up with a plan. Always start with that 1 to 4, 50% ratio because it's a good safe zone and it gives you a good idea of where their initial conditioning levels are at. So if you get through that first week or that first conditioning session, and you think, man, I can actually push these guys a little bit more, fine, so be it. However, don't get too much higher than a 10% increase because the body is usually safe around that 10 to 12% increase as far as keeping them from doing an overuse injury. And remember, it's a lot better to undertrain than it is to overtrain. You can easily correct an undertrained moment. It's a lot harder to correct an overtrained moment. Thank you guys. Good luck.